Welcome to the new season of the Live Your Spa Life show. The Spa and Spa Life stands for Seek Power Always, that divine power within you to do what you're here to do. The theme for this season is intentional living. Amazing people like you share ways to live by design and with purpose to ensure that this short ride of life occurs with choice, physically, financially, spiritually, and in your relationships to create a world-class life. In these times of uncertainty, it's time for you to move past the distractions and start trusting yourself more through your God-giving knowingness. No one truly knows better what's best for you than you. In this season, you'll have plenty of examples of people choosing their best life and creating a positive impact through intentional living. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us and being part of the Live Your Spa Life conversation. With us today is Maja Miller, a metabolic health coach and functional diagnostic nutritional practitioner. A fancy way of saying she uses clinical labs to analyze blood, urine, stool, hair, etc. to figure out why her clients feel burned out, exhausted, and sick. She then uses those results to create tailored bio-individual protocols to reverse their symptoms. Maja, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, it's so great to have you. Now, you are the owner of the Maja Miller Wellness. It's a six-figure business, and you help highly productive individuals and ambitious professionals transform their bodies from the inside out using your signature programs. So what makes your programs unique?
What makes them unique is that they're tailored to every single person that I work with. So your metabolism is as unique as your fingerprint, which means that there isn't another one like it out there. So everything that I do is tailored to the folks that I'm working with, specifically what's going on with their hormones, with their mineral levels, with their gut microbiome. So that's really, I'm allergic to cookie cutter programs because oftentimes when you're a little bit more mature, you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you've got a little bit of life under your belt, and your biography becomes your biology. And so we have to really deal with your unique particular set of circumstances. So that's what makes it different.
I love that. It's interesting because so many times people try and, put people in that cookie cutter situation. And in my circle, they call that body debt. Like, what are the things that you've experienced in life that, impacted your body differently, looked at things in a different way? And, through the course of your career, you've worked with over 10,000 women, and 1,500 of them have been online. What's been the experience for people working online versus working with you in person?
So the difference between in-person and online, so the in-person world was, I had a boutique fitness brand in Austin, Texas. And so that's where I saw so many of my clients. I would say about 95% of them were women. So I was able to see them, put my hands on their body. I had a boutique Pilates brand in Austin. And so I did a lot of body work in addition to the nutrition work that I'm doing. And so that was awesome because, you got that face-to-face contact with them, but it was also kind of inconvenient, right? To have to go somewhere. And so in this kind of post-COVID work from home world, I have clients all over the world. I mean, I have a client in Japan. I have a client in the UK. So the difference is I'm able to just access so many more people. So there's pros and cons with both, but those are the main differences.
Nice. Love that. So, you are in Austin, Texas with your husband and your pups. And so, you've got your furry family, but you are now, growing your son and
Yes.
kind of being your own doctor in a lot of ways. In what ways did you prepare your body, mentally, physically for your son?
That's such a great question. And honest, so I'm 28 weeks pregnant right now. I've got about another 12, 13 weeks to go. And this pregnancy, and I'm 44, so I'm not young to be having my first child. I think I'm technically a geriatric like pregnancy is what
I
they
think
call
anything
it.
over 35 is considered that, which
Yeah.
just cracks me up.
Yeah, it's hilarious. But the reality is I'm pretty old to be having like my first child. And I have had an amazing, easy pregnancy. I had, you know, probably 5, 6 years ago, my husband and I, we got married later in life. We decided to do a round of IVF as just an insurance policy. And then a lot of crazy life things happened. I, shut one business down, started another business, and then COVID happened, which really kind of like postponed our ability to, get pregnant. So this is also it's also an IVF baby. IVF rarely works the very first time, which it worked for me the very first time. I had no morning sickness. I've had great energy, no digestion issues. I've had no crazy cravings. You know how you hear like, cravings for chocolate and pickles and like all of these sometimes unhealthy foods. People have cravings for Chinese food all the time or like whatever it is. I've had none of that. And so I directly relate that to the work that I did. I probably spent close to 2 to 3 years preparing my body. I had a unique set of circumstances where I was dealing with very acute, prolonged stress for a very long time that impacted my inflammation levels, my hormone levels, my gut, my sleep, so many things. And so really some of the things that I did on myself, right? We teach what we need to learn. So I ran full labs on myself, fixed a lot of things with gut. I was having some issues after this very prolonged period of stress, losing some weight. And within probably, I'd say 30 days of doing my gut protocol, I was able to lose 20 pounds. I balanced minerals. So there's some macro minerals like calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium that are very, very important for all humans. I had very low levels in all 4 of those macro minerals. I did a lot of sleep hygiene, getting sun exposure, grounding, putting my feet on the earth. So those are just some of the things that I did over the course of a few years in order to prepare for this baby. And, I had the time because we weren't going to get pregnant during COVID. And so I felt like I had all of this time to really focus on pouring into my body so that I had very low stress and I had a lot of vital reserve because it takes a lot of energy to like grow a whole dang human. So those are just some of the things that I've done.
Yeah. That I was laughing because it reminds me like, when you're growing your own person, right? It's like that joke that came out have you made your own people? It's
Yeah.
like, and I'm their leader, right?
Yeah. I'm
And
literally yeah.
there's so many different areas to that. And I love that you touch on that, so many times people will focus on one area of their body, but, there is like a mental, emotional, there are different aspects of our life. We're social creatures, right? We need to be out in the sun. Like there's so many different things that we need to look at, that having a multi-layer approach to our health and well-being is such an important thing. And, you talk about like, what is like the number one reason that your body and business is failing?
Well, I always say that the number one reason that your business is failing is because you're failing your body and you're making decisions that knowingly or unknowingly, sometimes we think we're doing the right thing, but we're not. And that is very common because there's so much misinformation and so many trends and fads, or especially in wellness, or that you're maybe not making the best decisions, but you're not quite sure how to make better decisions, right, in a way that is easy and in flow with your life. And so yeah, I mean, I feel like we only have like one body in this life. And this body is the vessel on which you sail through, through life and get to your final destination, whatever that happens to be. And so if you are, cruising around on a ship that is rusted with big holes and no engine, right, like sputtering along, then anything that you do, whether it's your business, it's your romantic relationships, it's your personal relationships with friends and family, if you don't have the energy that you need in order to like slay your day, then that's going to really, reflect itself in all of those other areas of your life. So I always say you can't pour from an empty cup. And I work very specifically with, men and women that, man, they're going on fumes. They were for a long time able to kind of burn the candle at both ends, treat their body like pretty harshly. They have a lot of physical, biochemical, and emotional stressors that have led to a whole slew of symptoms that really aren't fun to deal with. So, you gotta put your own, what do they say? Put your own air mask on first on the airplane. There's a reason you can't help anybody else if like you aren't feeling, fantastic in your own body.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it'll be interesting historically, what we look back and call the last couple of years of the shutdown, because, people who were like, moving along at a good pace at one time, got halted in a lot of different ways. They got out of their routines. They maybe weren't paying attention as much to, because of being at home, maybe not exercising as much, maybe not eating as well. Like there were a lot of things that kind of took people out of the game. And so a lot of times when you're in a place, because depression was at a high time, a very big high, and, suicide was at a high. There was a lot of things that, because we are social creatures, in the isolation that people kind of felt that hit more than ever. And I think sometimes when you're actually in it, it's harder sometimes to see where you are at personally, to be able to kind of crawl out of that space. And so, you talk about the journey of being like in burnout to next level. For people that are maybe still in that, haven't quite got out of that, how do you actually take that first step to move out of that place of just not being your best self?
So two things. I'm going to comment on the COVID situation. The U.S. population was extremely vulnerable. There are many populations across the world that were not impacted the way that we were impacted. And a lot of that has to do with our gut health, and our population has awful gut health. If you look at some of the tribes, like ancient tribes in New Guinea, they're hunters, gatherers, they forage. They have over 400 active bacteria strains in their gut. In the US, the average is about 150. So it's like we're missing an entire organ, right? Because our microbiome is, there's a huge gut-brain connection. So you're kind of talking about anxiety and stress and burnout, right? So if you have, gut permeability, gut dysbiosis, you are probably having symptoms of anxiety, depression, disordered eating, disordered thinking. All of these things are very, very connected. So that's kind of like the first thing that I wanted to mention, is that like we were an incredibly at-risk population. And it's also one of the reasons why, so many kids are being born with behavioral issues, ADD, ADHD, autoimmune disease. I mean, like every kid I know has some sort of an allergy happening, asthma, right?
Right.
So there's that piece that I wanted to connect to. And so when you are in this state of, anxiety or depression, essentially you are in an active state of fight or flight. So your autonomic nervous system is kind of made up of the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, and parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. And the modern life that we live today, we are in constant acute stress because our bodies perceive a saber-toothed tiger chasing us down the street the same way that a mean tweet or something that upsets us on social media or an email or a text message from somebody that makes you upset. And you think about how often we would see saber-toothed tigers back in the day, probably not super often, but how often do we have something that essentially turns on that sympathetic nervous system? All the time. We're constantly connected to devices, right? We have a lot of physical, biochemical, and then also emotional stressors. And so if you are in that state of, I would say of stress, where you're of burnout, you're not quite sure what to do. It really starts with to me, all of the work that I do with my clients starts on a foundation of identity work. And so what do you want? What do you need to do in order to get what you want? And then who do you need to be in order to do the things that you need to do in order to get what you want? And so one of the first exercises that I do with all of my, one-on-one clients is that exercise. What do you want to have? And most of my clients want to have awesome energy. They want to have high sex drive. They want to have great digestion, right? They want to be able to sleep at night. They want to get rid of their rashes and skin issues. Okay, cool. What do you think you need to do in order to have those things? And many of them know, right? Okay, I need to sleep better. I need to work on sleep hygiene. Okay, I need to eat better, right? Generally, like we all know what we need to do, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, okay, that's usually where people start is like, okay, well, what do I need to do? And so oftentimes they start what I call the effort cycle, which is, you've been acting a fool, maybe not making the best decisions for a really long time. You can't tolerate how you feel anymore. So then you say something like, my diet starts tomorrow. Okay, Monday comes. Maybe you're eating the food you prepped for a day, a week, maybe a month, but inevitably something stressful happens. You have a bad day at work, your partner's being a jerk. And then all of a sudden, before you even know it, right? Before you can even realize where you're at, you're in the drive-through, like ordering your favorite, hamburger meal. And that typically is your F it moment where you say F it, right? Throw your hands in the air. And that starts another downward spiral where you are awful to yourself. You're saying awful things. You're speaking to yourself the way that nobody would ever speak to you until you feel bad enough again. And then you say, okay, my diet starts tomorrow. And that entire cycle right starts again. And the reason we're constantly in like starting and stopping that effort cycle is because we're always focusing on what do I need to do? Oh, I need to eat healthy. Okay, but who do you need to be in order to eat healthy? Well, I need to be consistent. I need to be persistent, right? Like those are two ways of being. It's kind of like the fuel for the car that takes you to your final destination. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing that I always ask my clients to like really evaluate. If you want to have all of these things in your life, a healthy business, a healthy family, a body, that you love to look at, that feels good, right? Who do you need to be? That's like the very, very first thing, which some people think is like a little woo-woo, but the reality is that 95% of all of your brain process happens in the areas of the brain that are kind of associated with the subconscious brain. And so your beliefs live in your subconscious brain, which means we need to reprogram that part of the brain, because otherwise you're bringing a knife to a gunfight. It's not going to work. And you're constantly caught up. Like, why is it that I start and stop all the time?
Right. Right. Well, and, there's something important to be said about the environments that you create, right? It's like, if you're saying, hey, I want to live a healthy lifestyle, but you have a bunch of crap at your house, right? When you are stressed and you hit those effort stages, like you mentioned, you're going to go to those things because it's in your environment and it's there for you. So when we look at the bigger picture and we look at, who we want to be, as you talk about, really setting yourself up for success in that and being able to look at those kind of things as well. And I think it's also helpful too to have have, people around us that support us, whether that is coaches, consultants, or, friends that, can say, hey, we're going to call each other when we have those down moments, and, really create those things that can support us. Which reminds me, one of the things I always love to ask my guests is that, because our environment is so important, we live differently in our bedroom versus our kitchen or our office. So what's your favorite room in your home and why?
My favorite room in my home, it's a toss-up. I would probably say we have like a open concept, like one really big open floor downstairs. So there's like a living room, like a big table, couches, big dining table, and the kitchen. And I would probably say there, because I love to have people over. I love to feed people. I feel like breaking bread is such an important part of life, not just like feeding your body, but it feeds like your soul. It's where you're able to, just like really connect with, with family and friends. So I would have to say that is that's number one. And my bedroom is a close second, but yeah, the kind of that living, dining kind of flex space is my number one.
Love it. So good. Now, I know also over the last couple of years, it's interesting. It seemed like we used to be able to have debates or conversations, and people seem to get triggered if somebody has a differing opinion than them. And
Woo!
I know it's such a huge thing. It's like, what happened to be able to have like a healthy debate or go, oh, that's an interesting perspective, or to just dive into that kind of conversation. And, we have a lot of disempowering things that happen in our journey. And I know for you, one of them was having kind of a deep family rift. And I know a lot of people kind of experience that, either whether it was in their immediate family or their close friends, where they thought like, I thought everything was going to be great forever. And now seems to be such an interesting thing where it seemed like a relatively minor thing that happened that set a landmine off for people. So if you can talk a little bit about your experience with that and how you maneuvered it.
Man, so, I think the last few years, both politically and kind of with some of the COVID stuff, which also turned into a political issue versus a health issue, honestly, has impacted a lot of people. And so for me, I can relate with being incredibly triggered by something. And the reality is when I was, younger, I was sexually assaulted, and that had a really big impact on me and my life and how I see the world and how I interact with people in the world. And so for me, politically, when there was like this, big, this president that was talking about, grabbing body parts and do whatever you want because you have so much money, that was incredibly triggering for me. And I literally went off like the deep end. And if you didn't see the world politically the way that I saw the world, you were a misogynist, you were a racist, you were a homophobe, you were, a deplorable, right? And then that really impacted almost everybody in my family, to be honest. And it definitely sparked like a lot of PTSD in my life. Like it was just a very, very difficult time for me and for my family. And then, fast forward to the COVID situation, where I had a lot of clients that couldn't, for example, get vaccinated or had an autoimmune disease and their doctors told them it wasn't the right thing for them. Or, I was trying to get pregnant. This is something very new. There's not a lot of research on it. And all of a sudden, I found myself on the flip side of that, where I was the person that was the deplorable in society. And it was such an eye-opening, such an eye-opening situation for me. I have a couple of friends that no longer talk to me because of, my stance on that particular issue. These are like 10-year, 20-year long friends. They were in my wedding. And I understand how triggered they are. One of my friends told me that I was single-handedly killing like grandmothers and children in the world, right?
Yeah, we've all heard
So I have so much empathy for her and for anybody else that that is reacting in that way, because there's a reason why we reacted that way, right?
Right.
So for me, it was because somebody like abused my body, and that was an incredibly difficult thing that I had to deal with. And the reality is that a lot of us are walking around with trauma, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be trauma with a capital T. And I always like to say, if you're drowning in 6 inches of water and I'm drowning in 6 feet of water, are you drowning less than me? Like, no, we're both drowning, right? So it's all relative.
Right.
And so I was so grateful for that experience, because what I finally realized is that it is my responsibility to not walk around God's green earth like an open, festering wound, right? Where any idiot could say something and ruin my day, my week, my month, and or year. And I had this realization that for the most part, people are good, and they react based off of their past experiences. And for me, having some compassion, some space, and some grace, first and foremost for myself, has now allowed me to have that for other people. I can now sit and break bread with somebody who has different political views, different health and wellness views, different views on how to raise a family. Do you breastfeed? Do you not breastfeed? Are you swaddling? Are you not swaddling? And I have the ability to protect my energy, to protect my heart, to protect my spirit. And so that was such a big, like learning lesson for me. And even if I'm now able to realize, even if I don't see eye to eye with somebody on 100% of the things, right, I'm still able to find like the good in them and have, a non-contentious, relationship, which has changed my life with my family, with my in-laws, with many of my friends. And I'm so grateful for that experience, as devastating and as difficult as it was at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I think that, I see at the bottom level of that, there's fear, right? I mean, there was a lot of fear that was happening in the media. A lot of people were making, snap judgment things. And like you said, a lot of it was all very new. And, we were hearing these things like, if somebody didn't make a medical choice, it was like, you're killing grandma, or you're affecting the whole world, or all of these things that were happening. And, one of the foundations of this country is freedom, right? Whether it's health freedom, whether it's, we get to make our own choices, we get to choose what's best for our body, and to really understand what that looks like. And I think that, instead of people having like this huge fear of this unknown thing, it kind of circles back to the beginning of our conversation of so much of what we're exposed to has to do with our own personal health, about, what our immunity is at, that we control that. And it does come back to our gut and what we've done to protect ourselves, that no matter what we are confronted with, that, it starts with what we can do. And no matter what's happening out in the world, I love how you share some experiences that you had, where if we look at things with a different perspective, instead of, because we react differently in the world if we come from a victim experience versus acting like a victim and saying like, how did this happen for me? How did this, grow my compassion? Or how can I look at things differently in the world? And I absolutely believe that anything that happens to us, that it then allows us to look at life differently, to have a bigger view, and to be able to show things in that way. And so, that really circles back around to, if we look at that bigger focus, if we come from that overview, we really can have deeper conversations with people and understand where they're coming from, and don't have to necessarily agree with them, but have some sort of common ground.
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally agree. And the reality is everything that happens in our lives is, for the most part, I mean, there's some like crazy bonkers like situations, but maybe you don't have any input in, right? But for the most part, we play a role, we have a responsibility in all the things that are happening in our lives.
Right.
And so as soon as I was able to take responsibility for my behavior, my actions, my health and wellness, like all of my relationships, then I was able to act from a position of power instead of a position of like being dispowered, right? And I think that is so important. And now today, looking back at all of the experiences that I've had in my life, my sexual assault included, I would choose it again because it has allowed me to grow and to learn and to really just evolve into the person that I am today.
Yeah, so great. Well, I think you and I could talk for hours here, and I know that our listeners are going to stay in contact with you. How can they best do that?
Man, I love to be just super accessible to people. So short of giving you my cell phone number right now, you can always email me, Maja, MAJA at MajaMiller.com. If you are interested in actually having a conversation with me around your health and wellness, the symptoms that you're feeling in your body, if you go to iopnextlevel.com, it'll tell you a little bit about the Insideout Protocol Next Level program, how I run labs, how we would work together. You can fill out, it's just a quick questionnaire about like what's going on with you. And then I'll just hop on a Zoom call with you. You can also find me on Facebook. So I'm pretty easy to get to, smoke signals, messenger pigeons. I'm all in.
Awesome. I love that. Well, and as you know, our theme for this season is intentional living. So in what ways are you living an intentional life?
Man, so I think with in preparation for a new child, a child coming into this life, it's not just about me. It's not just about my husband. Like I can mess up my own life, but the stakes are a little bit higher when you have another life in your hands. And so for me, it's been about really protecting my space energetically from people that maybe aren't like vibing with me or, where I need to kind of like protect my energy. So for me, I have, kind of made my circles like pretty small. And I'm very intentional about the time I spend with the people that I spend it with. So if it's not like a hell yes, then it's, no way. So that's one way that I'm really being intentional, in the way that I live.
I love it. It's so great. Well, thank you so much, for sharing your wisdom and being with us here today, Maja.
Thank you so much.
So our listeners out there, wow, there's been so much happening out in the world. And my message for you today is to really, as you're going through your day, to think about, what's been triggering you. Like, a lot of times it comes out of nowhere. And instead of having a reaction, give yourself that chance to be, offensive about it, to be able to look at what can you do about it and what's in it for you. Right? There's so many different ways that we can bridge the gaps these days. And as we talk about living your spa life, it's about seek power always, right? That power within you. And we have that power to have that pattern interrupt, to do things differently. So please share this and get it out in the world. Until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.